So I'm going to say women's rights are under attack. And you guys are going to say, we stand up, we fight back. Everybody ready? All right. Women's rights are under attack. What do? We fight back. Women's rights are under attack. What do? We fight back. Women's rights are under attack. What do? We fight back. Our next speaker is Cassandra Sanborn with Exodus Refugee. Can you come forward? All right. Can you all hear me? Hear me? All right. Thank you so much for having me with you here today. You can't hear me. Okay. Getting closer. Is that better? All right. So thank you so much for having me here with you today. As many of you know, Exodus is a nonprofit agency that welcomes people from all over the world here to Central Indiana to start new lives. We work with refugees and other humanitarian immigrants, people who have no choice but to flee their homes and come to Indiana to find safety and security here. There is no place in the world that is immune to war, persecution, and violence breaking out. And there is perhaps no population that suffers the consequences of this violence more than women and girls. In addition to fighting for their lives every day, women and girls often face gender-based violence that can have devastating consequences for them. Right now, as we think about the state of women's rights in this country, I think we can all agree things are not looking good. And so it's important to remember as we fight for the rights of women that we have to fight for the rights of all women. We cannot advocate for women without advocating for the rights of women who are immigrants. Women who have bravely overcome incredible circumstances, often fleeing on foot, carrying their children and whatever possessions they could save to come to the United States. Refugees are the most thoroughly vetted group of people who come to this country. No one goes through more background checks. They apply for their opportunity to come here. They wait, and they wait, and they wait. They are vetted by the Department of Homeland Security. They are vetted by the Department of State. They come here legally. Refugees bring so much to our communities. They bring their art, their culture, their knowledge, their leadership, their food, their resilience. They are our teachers, our doctors, our social workers, our pilots, our respiratory therapists, our small business owners. Our friends, yes, very good. And yet, people don't want them to come. And this is really interesting to me because whenever I bring this up, somebody inevitably says, I don't have a problem with refugees. I'm worried about illegal immigrants, Cassandra. I've never had a problem with legal immigration, and neither does Donald Trump. I think you're confused. That's what they say to me. And we know that's not true, and here's how we know. The first time that Trump was in office, he immediately began working to decimate the refugee resettlement program. He immediately lowered the number of refugees who were allowed to enter this country from the 110,000 people that President Obama had set as a goal to 50,000, then to 30,000, and then 11.
Coward!
Yes.
Shame!
COVID didn't help things, but by the end of the first Trump administration, we were welcoming just 130 people a year to Central Indiana through Exodus. To put that in perspective, we welcomed 130 people in the month of December alone. And that's because this program recovered under President Biden. This time when Trump took office, he just froze the program. He said we have to review it. We need to make sure it's more secure. We need to know exactly who is coming to our country. As though this is not already the most secure immigration program in this country. We already know exactly who is coming to our country.
Hell yeah.
This was challenged in the courts, and in late February, just a few weeks ago, we thought we had a victory. A judge issued a preliminary injunction saying Trump couldn't limit the program. But just 2 days later, Trump canceled all of the country's contracts with refugee resettlement agencies. all of the initial work that goes into bringing refugees here, all of the work that we do in the first 90 days to help them, gone. So at this point, we might be thinking, you're talking a lot about immigration. I thought this was a women's rally. So I want to tell you some of the stories of the incredible refugee women who are making our community stronger. First, let me tell you the story of a woman who comes from Eritrea, which is a country in Northeast Africa. She is the incredible mother of 4 beautiful girls. Their father remains in Africa, his case tangled up in complications that may never be resolved. She has never received a formal education before coming to the United States, and she never anticipated working for years here as a single mother. And yet she is succeeding. Her 2 oldest daughters got full rides to college. The oldest is happily married, and the second working on her master's degree. The youngest 2 girls are still in school. And mom, she has learned English. She drives a car. She works at the same warehouse that she has worked at for years, but it gives her the chance to provide for herself and for her children. She's her family's caretaker and the one who makes her girls' dreams come true. Another woman came here seeking asylum after fleeing war and violence in the Sudan. She was a human rights advocate in Darfur who worked to argue for the end of child marriage and taught women how to take care of themselves during pregnancy. She was arrested several times in her home country for protesting for the rights of women, exactly like we are doing today. One day, she and her husband found out that they were pregnant with a little girl. They were so excited, but also terrified. How could they keep their daughter safe in a country full of gender-based violence? And so they came to the United States. And now she continues to advocate for women and girls right here in Indiana. These are the people who are coming to our state. These women were able to thrive because they got the support that they needed when they first arrived, because we welcomed them. And so I also want to tell you today some of the stories of people who are not being welcomed right now because of the Trump administration's recent policies. First, I want to tell you about an elderly Congolese woman that we welcomed in January at Exodus. Her children and grandchildren were scheduled to come here in February, just a few weeks later. And this family had a plan. Grandma was going to stay home and take care of the kids and the house. Mom and dad were going to work, and the kids were going to go to school and work on the American dream. But mom, dad, and the children were among the first people to have their travel canceled by the Trump administration. They are not coming.
Coward!
They're not coming anymore, and we can't tell her if or when they ever will come. And she's lonely and heartbroken and confused. Why does she have to live apart from her children and grandchildren? Why, when they did everything right, are they not allowed to come anymore? Another case involves a woman with a young child who thought her husband was coming soon. She was in our waiting room recently, weeping and begging one of our staff members to help her. She kept explaining that all of the right paperwork had been filed and that her husband had followed all of the rules. Can you just call the president? She asked my coworker. Can't you tell him that my husband is a good man? And these are just a few of the women that we serve at Exodus. There are others, those with temporary protected status or humanitarian parole, those who are still waiting on their asylum cases to be decided, who are living in constant fear of ICE. So they have also done everything right. Members of both the Trump and Braun administrations have claimed that these are illegal statuses. These women are terrified that they will be arrested, held, deported, or even sent to Guantanamo Bay. And they have reason to be afraid. We know that U.S. citizens have been detained by ICE. Members of Navajo Nation, those who have asked for asylum and who are fleeing for their lives. We have had to tell our clients to carry copies of their documents so that they can prove they are here legally. And I just want to say that doesn't go well in history when we have to start carrying our documents with us. We know that some Venezuelans who have asked for humanitarian protections have been deported back to Guantanamo Bay and then back to Venezuela. And that's an incredibly dangerous place to be a woman, especially a woman who stands up for herself. fight in the wind here for a second,
Okay.
guys. We know that people who are deported, who have fled their countries because they are fleeing for their lives, are going to go back to countries where they may indeed die. And I don't think we talk about that enough when we talk about deporting people. When we are saying this person has fled for their life and we send them back to their home country, we are talking about sending them to their deaths.
Right?
I don't know about you, but I cannot look at my immigrant sisters, the women who shop at my grocery store, whose children play soccer on my block, and accept that there are people in our government who want to send them to their deaths.
Fuck the fascists.
Fuck the fascists.
Their rights are in danger, their safety, their health, their ability to provide for themselves and their families. They want to be strong members of this community, but they can't do that if we, all of us, don't step up. Immigrants are not criminals. There are so many studies that demonstrate clearly that refugees and other immigrants commit fewer crimes than those of us who were born in the United States. And yet, they keep telling us they want us to be so afraid. They want to paint us as these weak victims who should cower from violent immigrants, even though immigrants are more likely to be the victims of crime than the perpetrators. Immigrants don't take from you and me. In fact, according to one study that concluded during the first Trump administration, over a 15-year period, refugees and those with asylum contributed $123.8 billion with a B, dollars more to the economy than they quote-unquote took in benefits. They are paying for your Social Security and Medicaid. They are paying for our roads and schools. And those who are undocumented receive none of those benefits back.
Right. Correct.
Not a penny.
Immigrants don't take our jobs. In fact, the evidence shows that when companies hire more immigrants, they also hire more U.S. citizens because a rising tide raises all boats. And so why do they keep telling us otherwise? That's the question.
Propaganda.
It's because they want us to be afraid. Because afraid we are easier to control. Afraid we will let ourselves be torn apart from one another. We stop seeing refugee women as our sisters, but as people that we should be afraid and wary of.
Right.
And so that means we have to act.
Yes.
You have to keep calling your senators and representatives. I know it is so easy to fear that they aren't going to listen to you, but we cannot give up. They work for us, so we have to tell them that we are unhappy. And that applies not only at the federal level, but the state level too. There are bills like HB 1531 and 1114 that are going to be heard in this building that could be devastating for our immigrant sisters. We have to tell our state that we do not believe in hate and we will not give in to fear. And so, as you advocate for women, don't forget to advocate for refugees. Don't forget about all of the immigrant women who make our community stronger. If you want to help Exodus right now, you can give, you can buy one of our yard signs and pick it up, or buy a t-shirt and have it sent to your house. You can volunteer, attend presentations, and most of all, you can learn the truth and help spread that truth to the other women in your life. And you can remember that women are strong, we are resilient, and we are brave. We will not let an administration's lies and fear-mongering become tools to oppress our neighbors. Immigrant women belong with us here. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so our next speaker is Michelle Higgs.